Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 1, Lesson 12 and 13. Hopefully, I have all my technical issues worked out and fixed because yesterday we were running into problems left and right in the Google Meet. But if you haven't, please go back and watch Lesson 10 and 11. I couldn't teach that yesterday because, again, technical issues, but the video is up. So watch that and catch up if you can. Before you watch this video, lesson 12 and 13, we are going to be introducing a new topic today, so make sure that you are taking notes while watching, okay? So let us get started. So again, we will start with announcements. I talked about the grade system in a couple Schoology messages and in the video from yesterday. So again, if you have any zeros, I will be inputting 50s instead. And if you turn in all your major assessments and do the STAR testing, those 50s will be turned into 70s, okay? So I'm giving you every opportunity to pass. It's just up to you to get those turned in, okay? So again, the testing, there'll be during office hours. If you can't make the office hours, then just message me on Schoology or email me, and we can set up a time for you to come up to the school to take the test in person. Okay, remember the STAR testing is mandatory, so please get that done. Okay, and I'm pushing all the grades right now because there's 2 weeks left. Right, October 15th is the last day for y'all turning grades. I have to put in grades and finalize them for report cards. So get everything that you possibly can turned in. If you need any help on any assessments or assignments, let me know, and I'm more than willing to help you. Okay, so let's move on. Here are the learning goals for lesson 12 and 13. I'll quickly read through them and then come back to this video, okay? Okay, so the intro for these lessons. So remember, to every story, there's always a beginning, middle, and an end. So I want you to think and, in your own words, pick which part of a story is the most important, right? And explain why you chose that one. So if you pick beginning of the story as your most important part of the story, then explain why. If you picked middle, again, explain why. And click on that Padlet link, and y'all know the procedure by now, the steps. Remember, answer and try to use full sentences, right? I read through those just to see what y'all are thinking, and hopefully there's some good stuff written down, okay? And remember, you can always go through and see what your classmates are saying as well. And if you agree with something that your classmate is saying, click a heart on whatever they said, and I can see what most of y'all are thinking or liking, right? For me, I think the middle of a story is the most important. That's because that's where all the conflict comes in, right? The character development, what the character has to face in the story and try to overcome. It's usually always in the middle of a story. That's why I always think the middle of the story is important. But remember, there's no wrong answer to that question. It's whatever, it's your opinion and what you can explain, right? So take a couple seconds to do that and come back to this video, okay? So moving on, the important questions, right? The essential question is still the same as what is the power of storytelling? And we're going to be going into a very important aspect of storytelling in these 2 lessons that we're going over today. The focusing question is how does form shape a story's meaning? Remember, we're still focusing on structure and how the poem is written, right? And we will be going into that really deeply, especially over one specific term I'm going to be introducing to y'all today. And that term we're going to be using throughout the entire couple lessons coming up, okay? The content framing question for number 12, or for lesson 12, is what is the central message of This Is Your Life and how you tell it? That's just an article that's being introduced in lesson 12. I did not want y'all to go through it this lesson. I did post it on the 10.6 folder for today, so please go and read that and just let me know what y'all thought about it, because that goes into form and content a lot, and it shows you a lot of different things. So I highly recommend you going back and reading that article. It is a little bit of a longer read, but it is definitely worth your time. And the content framing question for lesson 13 is what does a deeper exploration of narrative arc reveal in the crossover? So again, we're always going to be deep diving throughout these lessons. And the thing we're going to be deep diving in today is narrative arc. That is the term that I am introducing today, and that is a term that we'll be going over in the next couple of lessons. Okay. So narrative arc. Why is narrative arc important? Narrative arc is important because it is essential to storytelling, right? Narrative arc is needed for storytelling. It is basically the beginning, middle, and end of the story, right? So a narrative arc has a beginning, a middle, and an ending with a common theme that holds the story together. So it usually always is, and majority of the stories that you read, it always has a calm beginning, right, where the character gets introduced, the life, everything around it is starting to get introduced to other characters. Then there's a middle with tension or conflict, right, building to a peak. It sets a obstacle that the main character has to overcome, and an ending where the conflict is resolved and the story gets wrapped up really nicely, right? That's essentially what a narrative arc is. Any like fairy tale story that you read or anything like that, that is an example of a narrative arc, right? A narrative arc is necessary for readers or listeners to understand a story, and that term that is used to describe understanding a story is called coherence, right? So coherence is important because it offers a way to reflect or make meaning of the story. Um, if a story lacked coherence, then it would be very difficult to get meaning from that story, make sense of its purpose, right? Coherence basically just means that the aspects of the entire story is making sense and that it's all connected, right? And that's essentially what a narrative arc helps with the storytelling, right? Is a very important aspect of storytelling. And narrative arc is always going to have a beginning, middle, and an end, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be in that order. It can go, you can start with an ending and then flash back to the beginning and the middle, and then go back to the ending, right? It doesn't always have to be beginning, middle, of an end. It can be in whatever order, but those three will always be there. Okay. Remember, narrative arc is super important for structure or form because you can see how the story is written and what the progression of the story is, how it flows through. And narrative arcs can span whole books or smaller sections. So as you can see in the crossover, some individual poems have a narrative arc in itself, and those narrative arcs are smaller versions of the whole arc of the whole book. So there can be an arc, inside of an arc, if that makes sense. So hopefully you're understanding why a narrative arc is so important, especially for the essential question as well. What is the power of storytelling? You need a narrative arc. You need that story progression, and you need that flow of the story for a story or a book or the content of it to be very important and for it to make sense to the reader, right? You need to be able to see how the story is moving along. It can't just be out of order like that, right? It always has to be connecting with each other. And again, it doesn't have to always be beginning, middle, end. It can be in whatever order, but it still has to connect. Okay? It has to connect with a common theme, and that common theme holds the story together. So in the crossover, the common theme is really Josh's sense of self and his journey, right? And the crossover follows a very simple narrative arc. It has a beginning where Josh and his family is introduced. It has the middle where he goes through his change, right? His sense of self and his view of the world is getting challenged with problems with his dad's health, his relationship with JB, his twin brother, um, having problems and where they're not talking, and him getting suspended from the team, right? That's the conflict. That's what he has to overcome. And then there's the ending where a lot of the issues are slowly becoming resolved or working themselves out for Josh, right? So that is essentially the narrative arc for the crossover. And some of the poems in the crossover itself has their own narrative arc, right? Where it has a beginning, middle, and end. So hopefully you're slowly starting to see and understand what a narrative arc really is. If you're not, then please message me so we can schedule a tutorial session where I can go in more depth with it. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to introduce to y'all a new poetic type. I'm trying to introduce as many poetic types to y'all as possible because the last major grade that we're going to be doing for this class is where y'all write a 3 different poems, right? And they all have to be each a new poetic type. So I'm trying to get as many poetic types to y'all as possible so you have a variety of choices. So the poem that with the poetic type I'm going to be introducing is called Mom, Since You Asked, I'll Tell You Why I'm So Angry. That's found in page 204. It's near the end of the book. So hopefully if you've been keeping with the book, this poem should be a little bit familiar to you. If not, I am pulling it up right here and then we will go over it together, right? So, Mom, since you asked, I'll tell you why I'm so angry. Because Dad tried to dunk. Because I want to win a championship. Because I can't win a championship if I'm sitting in this smelly hospital. Because Dad told you he'd be there. He'd be you. Because Dad told you he'd be here forever. Because I thought forever was like Mars, far away. Because it turns out forever is like the mall, right around the corner. Because Jordan doesn't talk basketball anymore. Because Jordan cut my hair and didn't care. Because he's always drinking sweet tea. Because sometimes I get thirsty. Because I don't have anyone to talk to now. Because I feel empty with no hair. Because CPR doesn't work. Because my crossover should be better. Because if it was better, then Dad wouldn't have had the ball. Because if Dad hadn't had the ball, then he wouldn't have tried to dunk. Because if Dad hadn't tried to dunk, then we wouldn't be here. Because if I don't have to, because I don't want to be here. So the only thing that matters is swish. Because our backboard is splintered. So this poem is essentially Josh explaining to his mother why he's so angry. Right in the poem before, his mom asked, why are you so angry? So what happened before was Josh and his dad, Chuck Bell, were playing basketball together, and Chuck went up to try to dunk the ball, and he suffered a heart attack, right? And he's in the hospital. He's currently in a coma right now, and they don't know if he's going to make it, right? Um, it's because he's suffering from, the disease hypertension, and we found that in the definition poem, right? So that's essentially what is happening in this poem. And going back to narrative arc, this would be one of the conflicts that Josh has to overcome, right? So again, in this poem, Josh is responding to his mom, asking him, why are you so angry? And as you can see, every line begins with because, right? The word because, and it relates a different response to his mom's question, right? Each line is a different answer to that question. Remember, what we're doing right now is we're annotating and we're analyzing for form, the structure, and the word choices, right? And the form is really similar to that of a list poem, right? It's sort of a list of things because all of the lines are different, but they're connected to the same theme, right? The list poem that we found earlier in the book was, 5 reasons I have locks, right? All the lines were different reasons, but they all connected to the same theme of why Josh has the hair that he has. This one, they're all different reasons, but it all connects to why Josh is so angry, right? But this is different. The form is a little bit different to that of the list poem because it is written to respond to a specific question, right? That question is, why are you so angry? And as you can see, the repetition, you can easily see the repetition in this poem. The repetition shows that Josh's frustration is building, right? A lot of stuff is piling up on him, and he doesn't know how to handle it. And he's just everything is slowly coming out, and he's slowly starting to explode. This poem, if you look deeper, it focuses on Josh's relationship with his mom, and it shows that other people in Josh's life are noticing his anger and his change. We saw earlier in the poem or earlier in the book, we see that Josh's relationship with his family is super important to him, right? It is a sense of self for him. It makes up a part of his identity, and all of the relationships in his life are slowly getting strained, right? This is the conflict that we're talking about in the narrative arc, right? This is the thing that he has to overcome and try to come out better and try to fix. So yeah, as we can see, it shows that other people in Josh's life, they're noticing that he's angry and that they're noticing that he's changing, right? Josh isn't the same person that he was in the beginning of the book. Um, This poem is essentially showing Josh's point of view about why things are happening in his life, right? Josh blames himself, right? As we can see, he blames himself for his dad being in the hospital and his dad having a heart attack, right? Josh is afraid because he can't control what's happening to him and his family, and he doesn't have the same confidence from before in the book, right? So early in the novel or early in the book, Josh took credit for his basketball team, right? He was confident, he was making things happen on the court, and he could control everything, right? But now he's afraid because he feel like he made something bad happen by making by letting his dad steal the ball from him and making his dad try to dunk the ball, right? And he feels like because of that, his dad had the heart attack. And if Jordan or if Josh was a little bit better and his crossover was a little bit better, then his dad couldn't have stolen the ball and they wouldn't be there, right? He is taking all the blame, and he's losing his confidence. He's losing his way. He's losing his identity because a lot of the things in his life are being taken away, right? He hasn't been able to play basketball, right? He's been suspended. His dad is in the hospital, so his biggest idol in his life, the most important relationship in his life, may be gone forever, right? His relationship with his twin brother Jordan is strained. They barely talk anymore, right? And he's taking all of his frustrations out, and his mom is wondering, why are you so angry? So again, remember, whenever we annotate poems, this is exactly what we're looking for, right? And hopefully you understand what this poem is about. So again, we annotated and analyzed for form and understanding, right? The form and the content. So the poem, the poetic type that this poem is called an occasional poem. So an occasional poem, some of the characteristics of it is it's written for and in response to a particular event or situation. So that poem was basically written for or in response to Josh's mom asking him the question, "Why are you so angry?" And the title, it usually includes a title that indicates the occasion for writing the poem. So again, the title for this one was "Mom, since you asked, I'll tell you why I'm so angry." That is basically indicating that Josh is just answering his mom's question, right? And the third characteristic of an occasional poem is explains a specific response on the occasion, and it's revealing present feelings and thoughts. So Josh, again, in that poem, is revealing his current feelings on the situation or his current situation in life, right? And explaining his view on everything that's happening and why it's making him so angry, right? So again, this is an occasional poem, and remember, whenever we get introduced to new poetic types or new poems, always annotate for things like that, and always analyze for the word choices and what is happening in the poem first, right? And then the deeper meaning of it, okay? So hopefully you're slowly understanding how to annotate and you're sort of understanding what an occasional poem um, is. Again, it is written for or in response to a particular event or situation. And again, if you have any questions about that, please let me know because y'all will be writing your own poems as a major grade later on. And I'll tell you more about that later on this week or at the start of next week, okay? So again, we do have an assignment is on the course homepage. It is a discussion post. You're going to be picking your three most important events that have happened in the book so far, and then you're going to explain why you think those three are the most important. Try to put the events in chronological order. Write at least 3 sentences and pull evidence from the book. Right, pull text from the book. Don't just have 3 random events where it wasn't even that important and not even have evidence or explain why, because I cannot give you full credit for that. Ignore this Kahoot link. I'm going to try to introduce Kahoot in the live classes. So if you want to do more fun activities, show up to the live classes, right? Because I like the pre-recorded videos. I think it's a very good tool for y'all to review or catch up, but you're sort of missing an aspect of the lesson by doing the pre-recorded videos. So again, if you have any assignment or questions on the assignment, let me know. It's on the course homepage, and all the instructions are written down. We're going to wrap up. We went over narrative arc today and how it impacts storytelling. from narrative arc, there's always a beginning, middle, or end. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that order. It can be rearranged, but they all have to be connected, right? And remember, a narrative arc is super important to storytelling. And a narrative arc usually has a calm beginning, a middle with tension or conflict that the character has to overcome, and an end where the conflict is resolved and the character comes out at the end, right? And remember that all of that has to deal with coherence. And coherence is important because that's basically saying that the story actually makes sense, right? And there's a common theme that's tying everything together. So again, that's basically what we went over this lesson. If you have any questions about that, let me know and I will review that with you individually. And go back and watch lesson 10 and 11 if you haven't yesterday already, because I remember yesterday was a nightmare of technical issues and not being able to talk and present. So go back and watch that video and read that article that I uploaded in the Tank 6 folder. It is called This Is Your Life and How You Tell It. So go back and read that because it is a really good example of a form and content and structure, right? And that article may be coming up in future lessons, so it's a good thing to get a head start on it. And again, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, y'all know the best way to reach me. Either the question board, message me on Schoolage, or email me, okay? But if y'all don't have any questions, I will see you here for the next lesson.